Members of the committee would like to convene the meeting at this time. Please be seated. When we took the lunch break, we completed the, just before the lunch break, we completed the appropriations for the Ministry of Financial Services. This afternoon, I'd like to go back now to page 10 of your document, and we examine now the appropriations to the Ministry of Education, Minister of Education, Youth, Sports, Agriculture, and Lands. We will begin by examining EGA 5, Primary Education Services, for $1,441,904. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chairman, with members' permission, I did follow suit and prepared a statement on the various issues to edify members that are present.
Please proceed.
Thank you, sir, for allowing me the opportunity to bring to the attention of the Honourable Committee the exceptional circumstances, appropriation changes which have resulted in the supplementary appropriations initiated by the Ministry of Education, Youth, Sports, Agriculture and Lands for the period January to March 2019. Department of Education increase in base salary for school teachers, coming out of the CIG engagement survey, Mr. Chairman, and as a part of the review of the civil service salary, the Department of Education Services and the Ministry reviewed the possibility to increase the base salary of all government school teachers to a minimum of CI $5,000 per month in 2 phases. Through this review, the Ministry of Education sought to increase interest in teaching as a career for Caymanians, to retain quality teachers within the teaching profession in the government schools, and to attract quality teachers from other jurisdictions to meet the educational needs of our various students. Teacher salaries, Mr. Chair, for government schools have remained largely stagnant for a number of years. Each year, we saw that there was a high turnover rate of teachers as they sought job opportunities elsewhere. Recruitment for quality teachers has become increasingly difficult without a competitive remuneration package. Countries such as the United States of America and England, Mr. Chair, have reported teacher shortages across the globe, and incentives are being introduced to retain quality teachers. These range from pay increases, year-long sabbaticals, flexible working hours, and development of multiple avenues to gain teaching qualifications, and a reduction of qualifications required to become a teacher. Mr. Chair, the Minister of Education therefore recognizes that whilst increasing teachers' remuneration will have a tremendous benefit, it is not the only strategy for increasing interest in the teaching profession for teacher retention. In addition, September 2018, the Ministry worked with the Portfolio and the Civil Service, POCs, to introduce the Teachers' Pay Scale Plan with realistic and achievable salary expectations. The plan outlined how teachers can attain certain standards, achievements, and qualifications in order to advance on the salary scale. This plan, Mr. Chair, allows for high-quality teachers to remain in our classrooms while earning higher salaries. Currently, Mr. Chair, teachers required promotions to other posts outside the classroom for higher salaries. And Mr. Chair, I just wanted to inform this Honourable House that that was a problem that we found as teachers were promoted, for example, to deputy principal position. They were some of our best quality teachers, but in order to get a promotion, they had to get upward mobility through that avenue. We also changed through remuneration, benefits, and other considerations the summer leave proration, which has had an impact on the ability of the Minister of Education to recruit mid-year. This change, Mr. Chair, will enable the Ministry to now pay teachers over the summer when they are contracted to work at least a full school year even if they start midway during the year. Currently, there's a need to recruit teachers after the school years have commenced, and their summer pay is therefore now being prorated. Therefore, Mr. Chair, teachers lose a portion of their summer pay, and this has had a negative impact on successful recruitment. We have also provided heads of departments with authority to grant discretionary leave for our teachers, Mr. Chair. Teachers and other staff on teachers' terms and conditions have to now take unpaid leave to attend significant life events, for example, the graduation of their child from the university, etc., occurring during the term, as they had no flexible leave allocation. With the approval of these funds, Mr. Chair, we'll now be able to introduce limited discretionary teachers' leave, which will allow the appointing officer the necessary flexibility and reward for their staff. The Director of Education Services, Mr. Chair, in consultation with the Ministry, would develop and implement internal policies to manage this particular policy. Resultant staff absences are expected to be covered internally and managed by the school, so that should not incur an extra expenditure. As a result of the increase of 2019 appropriations, Mr. Chair, we saw increases as follows: EGA 5, Primary Education Services, by $1,441,904. EGA 6, Secondary Education Services, by $858,626. EGA 7, Education for Students with Special Needs, referred to as SIN, by $163,911. We also will see Department of Education increase in primary resources. The Ministry of Education, Mr. Chair, is seeking to adapt and implement the 2014 English National Curriculum in order to improve teaching and learning process, as well as the quality of knowledge, skills, and working competences gained and mastered by students here in Cayman government schools. We will start with the primary school first, Mr. Speaker. The 2014 English National Curriculum sets out programs, Mr. Chair, of study and attainment targets for all subjects in all of our key 4 stages, primary to high school. All local authority maintained schools in England are now required to teach these programs of study. The majority of the national curriculum was introduced in September 2014 under a former minister, with English and mathematics coming into force for all year groups from September 2016. The exceptions, Mr. Chair, was to the science curriculum, which came into force with 10 students in September 2016 and applied to year 11 students from September 2017. The national curriculum, Mr. Chair, in England is arranged into 4 key stages, and we will be saying more about that at another time. The notable changes that we will see, which these funds will help us to affect in the 2014 English National Curriculum, will include assessment, which is very needed, Mr. Chair. The current system of levels used to report the children's attainment and progress will be removed. This was done to provide teachers greater flexibility in the way they plan and assess our students' learning. Mathematics. Children are expected to learn more at an earlier age, for example, to know their 12 timetables by the age of 9. English. Students are learning more Shakespeare, and more importance have been placed on spelling, grammar, and handwriting. New computing curriculum will require students to learn how to write code computer science instead of ICT. Science. There will be a shift towards hard facts and scientific knowledge. Compulsory second language. Mrs. Chair, the curriculum mandates the introduction of a second language in key stage 2. In the Cayman context, the language being proposed is Spanish. With the implementation of this curriculum, our students would be able to access the same assessments that are being used in the United Kingdom. This would provide the framework by which our students could be benchmarked internationally and ensure that we are equipping them to compete at an international level. Additionally, Mr. Chair, this data will also provide a framework by which we could better measure the performance of individual schools across our system. Mr. Chair, though we feel that this curriculum will meet the needs of our system in the current form, we also recognize that the content in the curriculum needs to properly reflect the specific needs of the students here in Cayman. To this end, the social studies aspect of the curriculum has been developed locally to specifically incorporate local identity of the Cayman Islands, and it will be split into 3 core areas: history and culture, geography and environment, social organization, civics, and economics. Mr. Chair, the Ministry, with the full support of the Education Council, has created a curriculum implementation team to review the English National Curriculum in its entirety and to provide a curriculum that meets the specific needs of our students here in Cayman. In order, Mr. Chair, to better facilitate this implementation, in January 2019, the Ministry sent a team on a fact-finding visit to United Kingdom. This visit provided the team with opportunities to see the curriculum in action, to have face-to-face meetings with practitioners and management teams, and of a sample of schools, some 9 schools on the first visit and 5 on the second visit. And the schools were the equivalent sizes to those here in Cayman. Mr. Chair, the schools visited had several factors that contributed to the economic success of the students. In all schools, the role of the school leadership was a critical component for success. Each school, Mr. Chair, had a principal and a senior management team that were relentless about ensuring students made progress. The drive was coupled with the competence to lead teaching and learning in their respective schools. Mr. Chair, in March 2019, my ministry arranged for a second delegation of the Cayman Islands government school principals and our deputies, who would be our future leaders, and we visited and did some training with few more schools in the United Kingdom. These schools are all in disadvantaged neighborhoods, but they all had high level of success. Mr. Chair, the curriculum change represents a substantial shift in education. It will be essential for key personnel in the ministry, the department, and schools to have expertise and experiences to make this shift a success. The Ministry views school leaders and future leaders as essential for training and leading in this curriculum implementation process in each of our government schools. Mr. Chair, the Ministry commissioned baseline school inspections back under the previous government in 2014 to 2015, and at that point, most of the government schools were evaluated as unsatisfactory. Since that time, the Ministry has been working assiduously and closely with the Department of Education Standards and Inspection for our schools to tackle necessary improvement. We have seen, Mr. Chair, the impact of this work and the successes of our schools detailed in the most recent inspection reports. We have managed, through careful planning, implementation, and monitoring, to take all but one of our schools from unsatisfactory to satisfactory or good. Mr. Chair, there is still much more work to be done, and a change in the curriculum and the new science model is an essential next step to raising standards. After the school visit, Mr. Chair, in March, the Ministry, the Department, and the team of school leaders and future leaders has been working to develop a detailed plan of implementation for the curriculum rollout in August 2019 in all of our government primary schools. Supplementary funding is therefore sought, Mr. Speaker, in order to cover part of the total cost for resources to support the implementation of the curriculum. 500,000 Cayman Islands dollars will be needed for educational supplies and resources such as textbooks. Mr. Chair, we will also see an increase in appropriation for EI-12 due to the sports facilities upgrade related to CRIFTA, which will be held here in Cayman over the Easter weekend. The Cayman Islands have been selected as a host country for the CRIFTA Games 2019. The Games are one of the top junior track and field championships in the world. The CRIFTA Games are an annual youth athletic championships which was started in 1972 by the Caribbean Free Trade Association, CRIFTA, which later transitioned into the Caribbean Community, CARICOM. The Cayman Islands participated in these games as an associate member of CARICOM. Mr. Chair, the Games are one of the longest running youth athletics championships in the world and have become the gateway for many of our Caribbean athletes to advance onto the world stage. These games, Mr. Chair, attract a number of international media, college scouts from the United States in search of athletic talent. Mr. Chair, 28 Caribbean states have competed in CRIFTA track and field championships, and each member state is allowed to send a minimum of 80 individual athletes and delegates. In reality, the total number of athletes and delegates range from 500 to 600 per championship due to budgetary constraints within each member state. Mr. Chair, the Games take place each year in different CARICOM member countries as indicated over the Easter weekend. The Cayman Islands have hosted these games twice before, 1995 and 2010. In 2010, the Cayman Islands made history by broadcasting the games via television for the first time. Mr. Chair, the Truman Bodden Sports Complex is considered the national stadium, as you know, of the Cayman Islands, but it suffered significant damage in Hurricane Ivan 2004 and received a new track surface and lights as part of the post-Ivan repairs. It has not had any major work since that time, and in order to make the facility appropriate and meet the international standards for the CRIFTA Games, a number of upgrades and repairs were required. These works began in 2018, but were not completed by the end of the said financial year. With the falling away of these funds, Mr. Chair, at the end of 2018 financial year, the Ministry did not have funds available in its capital allocation, EI-12, for capital upgrades in 2019 at the Truman Bodden Sports Complex to facilitate the hosting of the 48th Annual CRIFTA Games in 2019. Hence, Mr. Chair, an increased appropriation EI-12 equity injection for the Ministry of Education, Youth, Sports, Agriculture and Lands by $1,222,613 was sought. We also, Mr. Chair, saw an increase or asking for increase in appropriation EA-4, land purchase using Environmental Protection Fund. Mr. Chair, in July 2018, the Cabinet approved for the Minister of Education, Youth, Sports, Agriculture and Lands a request for CI $10 million in supplementary funding to budget EA-4 land purchase in accordance with Section 12 of the Public Management and Finance Law 2018 revision. The extract stated that the funds are to be used to acquire additional Crown land across numerous districts for the purpose of public use, beach access, and environmental conservation. Mr. Chair, on the 3rd of July 2018, the Standing Finance Committee authorized the Minister of Finance to disperse up to $10 million from the EPF to defray expenditure incurred in 2018 for purchasing lands which were for the purposes just explained. Members of the Legislative Assembly, Mr. Chair, subsequently nominated various lands across all districts in these three islands for due consideration, resulting in a list of 48 properties. All landowners were contacted to see if they were prepared to sell in principle. Mr. Chair, 2 valuations per property were procured across several approved valuation companies. On the 6th of November 2018, the Cabinet approved a strategy for the Lands and Survey Department to adopt, which has been adopted. The department was to offer each landowner the average of the 2 opinions of value. Mr. Chair, where an offer is rejected by an owner, the acting chief valuation officer recommends that she be authorized to negotiate up to the higher of the 2 valuations, including special purchaser value where applicable, except where she considers the higher figure unsupportable. Mr. Chair, in these few instances, she will offer up to the ceiling valuation figure that she is willing to support. all offers to be made subject to Cabinet approval. In conclusion, Mr. Chair, at the end of 2018, some funds remain unspent. CI $5.5 million for the purchase of lands using funds from the Environmental Protection Fund will be utilized in the continuation of the said project. Mr. Speaker, I thank you and honorable members for allowing me to explain in some detail the various exceptional circumstances which have resulted in the supplementary appropriations initiated by my Ministry of Education, Youth, Sports, Lands and Agriculture for the period January to March 2018. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. I recognize the member for Bond Town West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And first, I'd like to thank the Minister for that comprehensive statement. It did preempt a lot of the questions I had. I noticed, since the Minister spoke broadly, I would just make my question quite broadly because I know on EGA 7 is on a 1.6% increase, and on EGA 6 is 3.6%, and on EGA 5, which is 6.5%, I noticed from the Minister's answer, the real staff costs will probably be around 4.2% and $500K for textbooks on EGA 5. What I'm just trying to understand is just the government overall policy with regards to the use of textbooks. Because I noticed now it's being reintroduced, well, funds are being sought within the, on the primary side, but I'm just trying to understand overall on the secondary side what is happening with textbook, if it is already included and funds isn't needed, but we're trying to get back to at least having a textbook back in school. And we're just trying to understand if there's been a change in policy, and if so, what is that policy with regards to the use of textbooks? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for the question from the Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, upon having the opportunity to go around and visit the public schools within the Cayman Islands and under the direction of the Ministry, Department, etc., we took a decision that we wanted a world-class education system in the Cayman Islands, and there are many approaches to achieve the same, one of which we saw of paramount consideration was the availability and accessibility of various of media. By that I mean having textbooks at their disposals, but also having access to IT by the way of computers, whether it's through a computer lab or mobile computer trains going to the classroom. So we have some funds in the 2019 budget, but upon visiting the UK and seeing some of the resources that they have in addition to what we thought we needed to have from our local advice here, we thought that it was prudent in rolling out the 2019 adaptive change of curriculum for the Cayman Islands schools, that we needed not to spend time with consultants, which would use up the money necessary for the relevant and very necessary resources. We would have to come out through this medium for the additional $500,000 for textbooks, and I've given instructions that I am pretty much up to here with photocopies going home that parents can't read or understand or running out of paper. I want the textbooks for individual students that they're able to take home. They will have the responsibility of taking care of the textbooks and being accountable for the textbook. But I want to make sure that our children have every opportunity to receive a first-class education.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank the Honourable Minister for that. And I also want to thank the Ministry also for going out and setting a standard, or a set standard with regards to where the UK is, because more and more Caymanian kids now when they leave in school are going to the UK due to the fact that they can get home fees. I just want to go on record to say, Mr. Chairman, that while I recognize it is not, education itself is not an easy subject area, and there are a lot of demands on it, I believe that with what the ministry is going on and with Dan Scott as chairman of the Education Council, that they're moving in the right direction. And to some extent, I just have to record my thanks in terms of the direction that they're going on. So it's not really a question, but just to say thank you, and whatever we can do to help, just let us know.
Member for Northside.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to congratulate the minister on removing the leveling system of grades, because I think that that's the most abused and confusing system I've ever seen in my life. But one question on the textbooks. I know you said that the children could take the textbooks home, but are they going to be able to take home the actual workbooks from which the photocopies are being done now, in addition to the textbook? Because I think it's very important that parents can follow and see what marks their children are getting in these workbooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the honourable member. That's precisely the direction that we're going. In fact, we're going to be taking it a little bit further, subject to the funding that we get here and other funding if it becomes necessary, because the government, which I'm privileged to serve under the leadership of the Honourable Premier, takes education as a priority in the government, and we're happy that we've been supported by the opposition in all of these ventures. I've actually instructed the technical staff in the ministry, after having observed the type of workbooks that they use in these schools that we went. They're reflective workbooks, and for example, what I mean by that is that the page would have on the top a place for the teacher to make a comment and a place for the student to make a comment on a daily basis, and by standardizing the assessment of the work that we're given them, we don't have to wait 2 years for diagnostic intervention. Intervention can be done there at the schools. And in addition to that, I've also asked them to decentralize the specialists that we have sitting at GAB and put them out to the schools where their specialist skills are much more in demand. Because I found, for example, when I visited East End, there were like 19% comprehension. And I don't think any member in this house would want to leave that as a legacy, that that's where we found or left or carried education. So I'm extremely grateful to all my colleagues in government and to members here for their kind assistance, because it will take money, but we are determined to take it as far as we can.
You mentioned the second language, which I also support. Will that be introduced in all the primary schools? Because some primary schools have Spanish now and some don't. And when the children get to high school, some of those primary schools that don't have it are at a disadvantage.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, the members are absolutely right. There are currently some of our primary schools, public primary schools, that have Spanish as a second language, and I'm moving to standardize it, because I believe that under our Constitution, education is for everybody, and that certainly would include in its connotation that everybody have a level playing ground. There's parity and equity for all of our students. What I'm not able to say right here now is that every primary school will have it for September, because of trying to get the curriculum in and getting the resources, we will not be able to get every primary school in the public system doing the second language until 2020, but that is the goal, short-term goal.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I wonder if the minister would care to explain a little more detail the local management team that you mentioned in your presentation.
Yes, certainly, and thanks for the opportunity. It's the senior management team within the ministry, which would be the acting chief officer, Ms. Monteith, the main policy officer for the SCN, Mr. Ian O'Connor. Yeah, I'm coming there. I just wanted to make sure that it's not being done in a silo, where it's from the top down. I started from the top, but it included the Director of Education Services. We also took principals, a lot of them the last time, but we also took some of their deputies so that we could start thinking about upward mobility and the way forward for Caymanian leaders in education. And we thought that because they were going to be the frontline persons to implement the new system, they needed to go and see it themselves, because I had pretty much had my fill, and you know me, I'm going to speak quite frankly, of hearing that we can't do it because the children in Cayman, we have some 22% special educational needs. And we're adopting, you're probably going to get this first out, a new change in the attitude of all and sundry to add 3 letters onto whatever the policy is. And those 3 letters is going to be YET. We can't do it yet. And so we believe that in taking such approach from the ground up to the top, and we can change that mindset, we can begin to see a change. Obviously, it's a political risk for me as minister, because there's a very real risk, and I'm fully cognizant of that, that within a change, it takes a while to get the momentum that is there, but that's a risk I'm prepared to take if the end result will mean that our Caymanian children and those who come to study in our public school can come out and compete with anybody, anywhere, anytime.
Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the Minister. Over the last couple of years, we've had obviously an increase in our population and projections to get even more. We have more primary schools than we do have high schools privately. And there seems to be a bit of a waiting list on many of the private schools that have high schools. Is the ministry aware of any issues in respect to availability for kids going into year 7 and above as a result of lack of space because of the increase in growth of our population due to workers or persons becoming Caymanian through the process of immigration?
Mr. Chair, thanks to the Honourable Member. I am reliably informed that we don't have a capacity issue as we speak in the high school, but I could also take this opportunity to say that the project management team for the new John Gray High School has been working quite assiduously for the past 18 months to 24 months for that high school, which capacity will be about 1,200 students. It's a world-class school, and we're hoping, subject to no act of God being a Novus Actus Intervenus, to open the doors to that school in 2021. That will be where the school was started up by the Truman Barton Complex, and where the existing CIFEX is. That would be the campus for the new school.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I see the ministry is obviously addressing the problem with the government schools, but my question was more specific to the private schools. For those persons, for whatever reason, has chosen to use the private sector in respect to their schooling, it seems to be a bit of an issue on the waiting list for the private schools. And my concern is mainly for Caymanian parents who are choosing to take their kids to private school, because as a result of the influx of work permits and persons becoming permanent residents, they're now 14th, 20th, 100th on the list, and every school that you hear from has a waiting list every year for the high school section. Is that anything of a concern for the education department? And if so, have they had any discussions with the schools on how to help assist with the issue?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the Honourable Member. The member would probably be aware that my ministry and the government put an extra $2 million into the Peter Carpenter, the inspection, the school inspectorate. And the other thing that was done, under this administration was to move it from under the Ministry of Education to put it under POX, right? Under POX, so that you could have that independence with the evaluations. And the reason that we put extra $2 million there, because we wanted to increase the frequency of the inspections. And I've prefaced my answer of that, Mr. Chair, to say this, that they have now started and completed some of the private school inspections. And as they have done those, it will put the ministry in a position where we now have empirical evidence as to what needs to be done, if anything, and can budget and set our policies accordingly. I'm happy to report that prep school was done and completed, and they got really good reports. And they're also, I'm reliably informed that there's some private interest in constructing some new schools as well that Education Council and government will be looking after.
Member from Newlands.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the minister could let us know how many, across all the primary schools in the Cayman Islands, how many Caymanian principals and deputy principals we have?
Mr. Chair, I'd be most grateful if the member could repeat as I was consulting my technical staff.
Sure. Just asking how many Caymanian principals and deputy principals we have across the primary school system.
Mr. Chair, I don't know off the top of my head, but what I can say, since we increased the remuneration, we're getting, even teachers who have moved up into the ministry or who have moved to private sector want to come back into the government system. And what I can undertake to do is to ask my technical staff if they would kindly supply that and write into the honourable member as a matter of urgency.
And thank you. And Mr. Chairman, just a follow-up question. Then, if we could also get an indication how many Caymanian teachers have been promoted, let's say in the last 2 years, within the primary system as well.
I will certainly give that undertaking, taking into cognizance that Section 55 of the Constitution don't allow me to have that direct contact, but it's something that I'm also interested in, so I will so facilitate.
Member for West Bay, you have a question, sir?
Mr. Chairman, through you, I would also like to congratulate and thank the Minister for that move with the Education Council, which no doubt in my mind has made a big difference. And I've said it on the radio, and I hope that one day we can, I know you said you don't want it, but we'll have to do something, because I think you've saved our children and saved our country by that move. And you've already answered my first question in the testing and social services and social studies about our history and stuff like that being in the curriculum, so that question's gone out. Now, in this money, is there any investment being done in getting support staff for each teacher, for the teachers? Is there going to be any more support staff? Because there's definitely a shortage of support staff for the teachers.
Mr. Chair, thanks to the honourable member. We have some funds in, but we're also looking at the effectiveness of the current staff and how we can possibly reallocate to make them more effective. But I can say, I was hoping to say some of this in my education speech that I usually do in August, but obviously my first accountability as a member of the Parliament is I can say that it is my goal, hopefully within the next 2 years, to have assistant teachers from kindergarten up through year 9. And let me tell you why. We're finding that into the classroom there's a variety of skills that need to be met. And I am a very firm advocate that as much as possible children should be mainstream as opposed to be out in the corridors or suspended or expelled where their future becomes diminishing returns as soon as they begin to accumulate those type of penalties. We find that in the primary schools, the formative years is perhaps between age 3 to age 8. So for the immediate budgeting, we're seeking to increase an assistant teacher in some of those early years. We had a situation where I think it was just Red Bay that did not have kindergarten. There kept money in the capital budget to commence those buildings for this year. Obviously, we know how construction go, so we're planning for contingency in the event the buildings are not completed, that in the early, or the ECAP, the early children's thing we had on radio this morning, as most of us listened to OC, explaining how you can access those funds. One of the first things I did was to put a roll-in application for those funds, because as I came in, I found that there was a cutoff date. So if somebody missed that deadline, they were not able to get the financial assistance until the next year. And so that was a whole year that was being lost. So we've lifted it where you can apply at any time during the year to get that. We've also enhanced and increased the promotion of it. This week is the emphasis week for the early child education. So my technical staff will be making the social media and radio circuit to explain to our Caymanians, because it's only Caymanians are the ones who are eligible. It's subject to a means test. And I know there were some questions about why not everybody. Well, we haven't struck oil in Cayman yet, as much as I would like every single person to have free education. We've taken it, our government has taken that to the max. And so we're trying to utilize the funds that we have in the best possible way so that it won't be in a wastage. Mr. Speaker, we also found that there are some behavioral issues. The interesting thing, sorry, Mr. Chair, the interesting thing that I found when I visited the schools in the UK is that there were hardly any behavioral problems in the schools, and not because those children were special, but because they had the necessary resources and the necessary teachers within the classroom and the change of attitude where their whole governance structure was different. And so the next piece of early information members would get is that I'm seeking to move forward to get my colleagues' support with the change in the governance structures of our school so that more autonomy can go into with the principals in the school, and we would hope that those civic-minded persons within our jurisdiction would get on the Board of Governors and take pride in the school, help resource the school, and that we can see a real difference in our structure. How long we'll take will be subject to funding and other extrinsic factors that we may not have control of. But as far as having control of the factors, the government of which I'm a part is totally committed to making that, continuing the good things that were already in education, but where we need to make changes, to make those changes, because the child is the paramount consideration, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, I haven't finished yet, sir.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chair, through you. The minister was 100% right, because if you go to some of these classrooms, I've been to 4 primary schools, I've gone in and read, and in the class, some of these teachers have 3 to 4 different levels of children. And when we were in school, there was a top set, second set, third set, fourth set. Some people seem to think that's not good, and if you worked hard, you get up to the next set. And what it does, it allows the teacher to be able to more or less have one lesson plan. But when you have 3 or 4 different learning levels in each class, the teacher has to be adjusting for, and then when you're giving work to the 4 or 5 really smart children, the ones that are slower, you need someone to help with them. The teacher is is being spread thin. And this is what's happening. So the minister is 100% right, and I'm sure you'll get support from everyone for that, Madam Minister. Mr. Chairman, another question. There's something called the CAT testing, and this is done on the computer, which means we are asking children to take a test in a different form. Is there anything being done to prepare them to do a test in this manner? Because I know the parents are telling me that some of the children, when they get to the CAT test, they're a little tight and up because they're not used to it. What's being done about this? Or can something be done, I should say?
Mr. Chair, as I understand it, it is a cognitive ability test, so it's not something that you can actually study for. There could be some training with the actual utilization of the computer. And there's also the option of taking it manually, but that's an internal affair. So if the honorable member is aware of situations where children aren't being allowed to do it manually, then if you would let me know, I'll pass it downstream through my chief officer.
No, Mr. Chairman, through you. It's not that they're not being allowed. It's just, and it's, yes, it has to be done there. But other tests could be done that the children could be used to doing tests on the computer. That's the point. That's what some of the parents are saying.
Mr. Chair, I'm reliably informed that that is in tension with the new standardized assessment from the early years right up, is not only to test the cognitive ability, but to give them the frequency that is necessary to be able to perform the testing, and it would not be negativated by the inability to utilize the instrument that is used for the testing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Parents are also telling me that they're being told. Now, these are parents who try to spend time with their children, because I'm cognizant of who complains and what they complain about. You have to be, when you've been in this long enough, you tend to know what's what. And they're saying that they're being told that their child has achieved this in school. But when they get the child at home or someplace, the child's not achieving there at all. Will there be a pre and a post Or is there a pre and a post? If not, is there any chance of putting a pre and a post test that we know where our children are at the beginning and where at the end? And coming off of that, parents are asking me, why is it when they ask for their child to repeat a year, they're being told they can't do it because they want their child to do it and they know it's better for their child, but they're being forced to pass their child on to our next class and their child is already behind.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank the member for that question. Mr. Chair, the new curriculum will be based on target setting, and the workbooks will provide practice for skills at home. And it's because it's going to be moved to standardized testing, it's going to be international testing, so the scope or the room for the internal subjectivity that goes on now with some of the testing, we hope to eliminate by standardizing and moving to this new curriculum.
Mr. Chairman, this is probably my last one. I'm going to go on to what the member from Newlands questioned. What avenue do teachers have? And I'm talking, I will highlight it, Caymanian teachers. What channels do they have that they can deal with when they are being victimized or stressed? Because there is a hierarchy of non-Caymanians to get to that are very, very buddy-buddy. So I know one really good, and I know another three that has complained about the same thing. And the three of them are now going to their representatives. They were worried about the trust thing, about getting in trouble. And I told them they could trust the three people in there who represent them. One is on this side, and the other two is on that side. And I told the parents, go and talk to your representative, show them the facts. And I would ask the question, what avenue do these people have? And especially when the ministry is telling this is what they want done, and you have principals saying, I don't care about the ministry, I'm going to do it my way. What avenue do they have to get around these hurdles? And especially when there's no doubt that they're being held back from advancing in the school.
Mr. Chair, might I refer them through the Honourable Member to the Public Service Management Law, and also to confirm that the acting chief officer has an open door policy that they can approach her with it. As to the principals saying that they don't care what the ministry is doing, I have a famous phrase called watch the space.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, and thank you very much to the minister and to you and your staff. Continue to back the Education Council. I think you all are doing some great things, ma'am, and you'll have my support. Thank you.
Member for East End, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I wonder if the minister can tell us in all this, these changes and the salary increase and the likes, if performance standards have been set for the teachers now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The relevant staff is currently almost completing the review of the management structure and accountability that's expected and legitimately anticipated. It probably will include some change and movement of staff, so we expect that if it's done reasonably, that we'll have the support of the whole House when the new change comes around in September. And also, part of that review, to the Honourable Member through you, Mr. Chair, is to ensure that the targets expectation review is shorter spans of time, so there won't be a lag in finding positive and relevant remedies to some of the situations that we're finding in the system.
Mr. Chairman,
Member from East End.
I believe the member knows quite well that we all support provisions for education, but we want to see performance standards as well. To he who much is given, much is expected. And I certainly look forward to change. I don't know what that change needs to be, but I know we need to find some means of change. And because the direction we have been going on for many years has not produced the desired results. And people must be held accountable. I mean, life is not that free that you're not held accountable for your responsibilities. I am, and we all are. So, you know, people can't expect, and I'm not talking about only money, and I'm not tying it into money because money is not a very good motivator. But I believe that if you expect to be paid, then you are required to work to get paid, and you are required to produce. And if you don't produce, then we have to part company, and amicably part company. My other question was, we had an island-wide discussion and dialogue, and sometimes acrimoniously so, about the dress code recently, the change thereof. I wonder if the minister is aware that that is not being properly enforced.
Mr. Chair, I'm reliably informed that recently the minister was made aware that some schools are not enforcing them, although they did start with the progress, and they're having meetings to take care of that situation. When we put the policy through, and believe it or not, the parents were more acrimonious than the students themselves. And when we put the policy through, I know as far as the BRAC related, there were like 2 students who were not adhering, and I gave the instructions that it's 3 strikes and you're out. And before the 2nd strike, they conformed to it, and now there's no problem there with it. So I would imagine the schools you heard about where it would be on Grand Cayman.
Mr. Speaker, again, I never say these things in a vacuum. I've never tried to draw information that I don't know about. I always bring to this Honorable House information that has come to my attention, and from reliable sources. I have always done that. And that's not to say that the minister does not believe in me, but I can assure the minister and her staff in the ministry that my information comes from very, very reliable bus drivers who take these kids out on trips, tours, or whatever they are, educational trips. And they are incensed about the condition children come on to those buses, not from home, but from the school, to go to on these trips, and also going picking them up in the mornings. Now, it doesn't make sense if we have a law, a rule, a policy, and the teachers are not enforcing it. I had my position with it when it came out. I was not critical of it. I believed in it. And as a matter of fact, it dropped on my doorstep. And that, I did not pull any punches with that. And those are the rules, those are the rules. And this is precisely why we have such a discipline in this society. It starts with our children, and if we do not give them values, then they will turn into human beings that have none. And if they can't follow the rules, the Constitution is very specific. We must not hinder any parent from putting their children in other alternative education other than the government. And if they don't want to run by the rules that we have, and there are private schools, and there is home education and what have you. So I am in full support, but that needs to happen, and please.
Mr. Chair, the members' concerns are duly noted, and the technical staff know what my position is on it, and I have every confidence that they will make the necessary adjustments.
Member for Bodden West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just through you to the Honourable Minister, and I'm not sure if my question relates to the spend, but just in general, my colleague from East End had mentioned school buses. And one of the things that has been affecting us in Bodden Town has been the after-school programs and or lack thereof in some cases of access in some after-school programs for not having proper bus transportation because the buses leave at a set time. So my question is there any money in the budget or upcoming budget that will be used to purchase school buses for Bodden Town? And then also another issue, and again, this is more general or there's something to consider during the budget time, is in some areas during the rainy seasons when the kids are waiting on the buses, the lack of bus shelters in some cases, is there any, or can there be any consideration given in the upcoming budget to, one, purchase the buses for Bodden Town schools if needed, and two, what we can look at in terms of infrastructure during the rainy season when the kids are waiting on those buses? Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, all members would have heard last year when our government announced that we included funds for buses for pretty much all of our public schools. Unfortunately, we had to depend on another agency to acquire the buses, and they said that they only had 5 months to do it and they needed 6 months to do it, so the money was left unspent, which means we have to include it into this year's budget, fortunately, and it's not into the supplementary, but my acting chief officer said that we've been able to identify within the 2019 budget some possible savings for whatever reasons, that there'll be savings realized that will go back with pretty much, it may not be the same bus, but it'll be the same schools getting the buses. Because, for example, there was one that had asked for a 65-seater, and on reflection and talking a bit more, that may go down for 2 smaller buses. Oh, and the bus shelters, there's currently no funds in the budget for that, because traditional has been like Rotary Club and other special clubs that have provided that. So I would encourage members to nudge those very able and capable NGOs to get into some early community spirit in those areas along the bus route that don't have bus shelters, if they would be so generous to contribute to the education of the country in which they have so positively benefited from.
Just one thing just to add on that, that's on the shelters, and I know we're doing the Ministry of Infrastructure next, but those shelters requires planning approval sometimes, and it is becoming sometimes an issue to deal with. So even if you go and push the private sector to do it, you know, if planning can assist in terms of expediting, that would actually help. Thanks.
Member from Savannah.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I know that the minister has assured me in regards to the Savannah situation. Seems like they may not have requested a bus, but I know they desperately need it, especially like if they go on field trips and stuff like that. And the other thing I'd like to bring to my good colleague, the Minister of Education, she was up there on Sports Day, the condition of the field and getting there and around some of the classrooms, especially for the infant section, the dust in there is almost like coming off the Sahara Desert at time, especially in this dry weather. I just ask that some attention be given and looked at. Thank you.
Member for Georgetown Central, you have a question?
I think the minister is about to answer, but I just want for her to confirm that Georgetown Primary is included in those buses, if that is the case, if they were on the list.
Mr. Chair, as you would know, being a finance minister, this is a government who takes education as serious as a heart attack. So I am very happy to announce that all of our public schools will be receiving a bus, seeing that the request has gone in and there's more than 6 months left for the year. So hopefully that entity won't have that for an excuse. I did interfere. And also to give undertaking to my friend from Savannah that there are currently no funds in for specifically for Savannah for what he just asked, but there's always a maintenance vote. So I'll ask DES to look at that to see whether they could acquiesce to your request. And finally, for the previous question, Mr. Chair, as far as it relates to the bus shelters, unless it's within the road reserve, most times it's in private property. So I should go to help beg the private sector for me within the ambit of the legal jurisprudence. Perhaps if you have some supporters that land fall into, you might speak to your supporters to also have a good civic mind to give up a little piece of land, even if it's a 99-year lease for a shelter to be put on. I see the member from Northside face lighting up, so don't let him lead the way and beat you all out from Georgetown, Northside, Savannah, and the rest of it. That's on a lighter note.
Member for Georgetown Central, you have another question? If there are no further questions, member for East End.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe that one of the problems we're having with our children, in addition to them not slowing down around the schools, drivers, they're overtaking our bus when they have their emergency lights and whatnot on. And this is not a coincidence that they don't notice the lights are on and they accidentally pass the bus. These are deliberate attempts to overtake because they're in a rush. May I suggest to the minister that we install cameras in all buses facing forward through the windscreen and facing to the rear to record all behaviors on the bus and all the vehicles that pass in order that we can properly prosecute these people. But in tandem with that, we also need to change the legislation so we can, the application of fees that will be a deterrent, or fines, may I say, that will be a deterrent to some of these people who have no respect for the buses, but more importantly, no respect for our children. And those of you who are much younger than I am will not remember when we had accidents in this country and lost children as a result of that same thing. It was right up my alley at one time too. So we need to do something now, because they just drive by those buses. The bus drivers are now so creative. They're trying to turn their buses
in the middle of the road,
on the angle so that they can't get by. Yeah. That doesn't stop them. They go in the side of the bush and get by it when no oncoming cars, when there are no oncoming cars. So please, let's. And the other thing I noticed that the buses don't have again is that arm that used to swing out to ensure that the children walk farther away from the and where the driver can see the child in front of the bus if they're going around the front. That was an arm that was implemented years ago on buses. I don't see that on them anymore, or very few then.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the Honourable Member. His concerns are duly noted, and the staff and the government will take it under active consideration for it. I think there are probably more pros than cons for it, but we just want to make sure that it's not infringing all those wonderful human rights and other rights that we have.
Member for Savannah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was at the hospital earlier on checking on someone, so I may not have been in the first part. Just wondered, the Savannah Primary School, in their inspection, I must say I was a bit taken aback, and the results to me were not up to scratch. I don't know if the minister could give us some guidance, not only of the school, but what happens when things can be so down. I know some of the teachers who work diligently and hard are also concerned. Is there guidance, or what happens in a situation to uplift them and help them to try to get back on track? Because as we all know, at one time the Savannah Primary School was up in the was well advanced and got good reports, and someone is saying all of the schools, and I just wonder what happens when these down inspection reports come in. Especially it can be devastating to some of the teachers, and we saw what happened at Clifton Hunter, where they said 40-something of them were not up. The teachers, that is, weren't as up to scratch. What happens in instances like this? Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the honourable member. I'm reliably informed by my acting chief officer that once inspection reports come out, if it puts a spotlight on something that they were not already cognizant on, meetings are held with the principals and the teachers that are related are given an opportunity for additional training if necessary. But at the end of the day, we ought also to take cognizance that when they're hired as professionals for that particular job. And we know some other things come in to the mix. But I'm willing to speak off my put in as it relates specifically to the Savannah Primary School with the honourable member after we finish here, because there are some considerations. The main consideration being that we have some 5,020 students in Cayman, and at the end of the day, we're going to do what's best for them, which may be some hard discussions which have been taking place this past week, including today.
All those in favour of EG...
Just a follow-up.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Minister. I'm glad to hear that. The other concern that I had is that I know, I can't say specifically, but I've heard that there's such a big percentage of some of the youngsters also at that school and throughout the schools that need some extra help, and the shortage of the support staff that needs to be there to give them guidance. I would encourage, wherever possible, not only at Savannah, but wherever is identified, especially some of the children that are given difficulty, which is causing the other students that are trying their best to go forward, is holding them back, to put it bluntly. And I would encourage that this be identified and see what remedy can be put. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As indicated, there will be some funds for additional assistant teachers to help the situation, but the inspection report, I'm informed, identified that Savannah was one of the schools that were adequately staffed. There were some issues about the utilization of the staff that was already there, so those were some of the things that were in discussions in the meetings that were held recently. But if there are any particular class or classes that a member needs to bring to our attention, we'll be happy to entertain it.
Those in favour of EGA 5, Primary Education Services, for $1,441,904, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. EGA 6, Secondary Education Services, for $858,626. All those in favour of EGA 6, Secondary Education Services, for $858,626, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. EGA 7, Education Services for Students with Special Needs, $163,911. Are there any questions? All in favour of EGA 7, Education Services for Students with Special Needs, $163,911. Please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. EA4, land purchase, $5,500,000. Are there any questions? Member for Northside.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, just for clarity, the reason for the appropriate change says land for conservation purposes. Is this land that the National Conservation Council is trying to get people to buy, or?
No, Mr. Chair, and that's probably a good spot. I mean, in normal circumstances, I probably would have left that in there. But knowing the history and the background, this is land that we voted at $10 million for last year that was unspent. So that the parliamentary intent is clear. Let me just repeat that. This $5.5 million that came from the EPF fund to the Ministry EA4 is for the same said purpose of last year, to continue to purchase the beach property and the property that needed, we felt that needed to be in Crown ownership in perpetuity for the people of the Cayman Islands. I know that there's some peripheral movements around, but I want to make it absolutely clear that if it's going to be solely for conservation purposes and transfer to National Trust or what have you, that needs to be a separate fund. This money is demarcated for what we voted last time. It wasn't spent, so we have to vote it this time. Hopefully that's been recorded in the Hansard and it won't come back in another form.
Member for East End.
I'm just wondering if there really is a requirement to revote it, because it's a dedicated fund, but because this is the first time I've seen it revoted. Before, when we moved money from there, it wasn't. But if that is I don't have a problem with that, because we need to continue that, because I have a question for the minister on the floor anyhow.
All those in favor of EA4, land purchase, $5,500,000, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. This concludes the appropriations to the Minister of Education.
Mr. Chair, just if you would kindly permit me to thank my staff and thank all members of the Honourable House for their direct or tacit support for education. I still believe that if you think that education is expensive, try ignorance. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. We will now turn our attention to the Ministry of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure and examine those appropriations. That may be found on page 20 of your booklet. We'll now continue with the Ministry of Commerce and Planning and Infrastructure and turn our attention now to PAH4, Management of Public Recreational Facilities and Cemeteries for $845,000.
Mr. Chairman.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Oops.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Apologies.
Can I? I don't know whether the minister would want a question at this point, but I know that this vote is saying for management of various public entities or facilities, and I just want if he wants to do it at this point or later on, to explain a little bit about where they're at with the proposed work on the West Bay Cemetery. Maybe he'll wait till further down, because I do believe there's another section somewhere about. As I said, Mr. Chair,
Okay.
wherever the minister chooses to.
Thank you, sir. I think I got a bit ahead of myself anyway, because I did not invite the minister to speak to the appropriations, make a statement if he so desired to do so.
Yeah, that's a good time for him to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, that actually falls under, I think, EA 147, minor district works. So I can address it then, if it suits the member. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, that's good with me, as I say.
Okay, sir.
I
Thank
just need whenever he can do it.
Did you have a statement you would like to make, sir?
No, I don't, Mr. Speaker. Just to thank the members in advance for their support.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
We turn our attention PAH4. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chairman, just a quick question. I'm here on this side, sir. In regards to, I see some activity at the Cowood Beach in Bordentown, a bunch of light poles and some other wood down there. What's happening?
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, that falls under the very same EA 147, I think. No, that's. Are we covering Cowood? 47, Mr. Chairman.
This particular vote does relate, I think, specifically to the NICE program. Am I correct?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, this particular vote is for the NICE program that the government has decided to do both a summer and winter program again this year.
Mr.
Any
Chairman?
specific questions on this?
Yes.
Member for Newlands.
Kind of a request. What has been happening since these cleanups have been done sort of regularly now, and it's getting on to twice a year. I always get requests. I think all of us get requests for focus to be given to areas that don't technically fall under government, like public open spaces that have been turned into parks. Could we just give some consideration to at least using the NICE cleanup to make it part of the remit of that they will clean up those areas? Because it has to be done. I mean, there's no sense in trying to avoid it. It's someone that has to clean it. So.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the member. Yeah, we do try to address some of those issues, and then specifically recently, and I believe this summer will be the same thing. We're going to try and address the issues with the sargassum and the trash that we get on the beach. But what I will do is quite often, and I'll invite the members to do so again this time, is when the program is approaching, or I'll get requests from members saying that the specific area could use some attention, and then we divert persons to that area as much as we can. So when the time gets closer, we'll have the opportunity for members to give recommendations as well.
Member for East End.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this also includes the Parks and Cemetery Unit. I wonder if the minister can tell us if there are certain areas that beaches, little parks that were being maintained by the Parks Unit that is no longer being maintained by them. And if we could know which ones they are.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, if I could ask the member to repeat that, as I was just conferring with the staff member.
Mr. Chairman, there are a number of parks, beaches that the parks unit used to maintain before that they no longer do. And can we know why they don't no longer do and which ones they are?
Mr. Chairman, thank the member for the question. Would you have specific places in mind? I know the one that I know about is where the park rangers used to take care of the entire Barcus area, including the private property there. But since we have moved away from the park rangers and have put that out to the private sector to do all of those parks and the cemeteries in West Bay, we no longer do the private property in that area.
Mr. Chairman, there are a number of little areas, I think it's beautification areas, I would call them, in my constituency that the park unit does not do any longer, like along the side of the road and the likes. Behind the wall at the entrance to East End proper. Now I have asked for a very long time to get that, should I say, de-rocked and turned into a beach, but I have had to ask them on occasion to go there and clean out the access ramps, and I don't think it's their mandate to do those. I know that everybody asks them to do everything, but
yeah.
I think it's outside of their mandate, that one in particular, but they were doing some maintenance on it.
Mr. Chairman, thank the member for drawing that or for the question. Mr. Chairman, if you'll see in PH 10, the action next vote, that is a challenge we've had over the years. That particular department had been reduced in order to cut costs, and we've never built back that department. And so what we have been doing is things of that nature we will do on a request basis. And as you know, or as they'll see in the next vote, Mr. Chairman, we will be having to increase that because of additional responsibilities coming up at the end of this year.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that's the nature of this country. We build it and don't maintain it. And then we got to build a new one 10 years. I guess you cannot expect no less. They don't even keep the landscape on anything proper. Mr. Chairman, let me move on to another thing. I wonder if the minister can tell us under this, what is the policy on repairs and replacements of docks?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have docks coming up in another appropriation, but happy to answer that. On the government docks, the department is responsible, and we endeavor to carry out the repairs, and in particular, and for instance, after northwesters or storms. In certain, it will take the government a bit longer because we have to go through the tendering process, but we have in the past and continue to work with private sector where some of these docks are actually repaired by the persons who use the dock on a regular basis with our assistance.
Really? Did he say that private sector that uses these docks? Mr. Chairman, was that what I understood from the minister?
Through me, you can direct the question to him.
But I'm asking you.
Not my place.
You need to ask him, if that's, because I said, Mr. Chairman, am I understanding the minister to say that?
Invite the minister.
You invite him or ask him?
Ask him to respond to your question, sir.
Mr. Chairman, in circumstances where the docks are used by some private sector, and as a member knows, they have a policy for offloading and unloading. We put the signs up that you have X amount of time. I think it's 30 minutes to offload or unload. In those instances, we have had private sector step up to help repair the docks.
So, Mr. Chairman, does that mean that we're then obligated to share that dock space, which was originally, all docks in this country built by government was for pleasure and fishing? Are we now in a situation where private sector has the right to use a dock because they have repaired it?
Mr. Chairman, I am not aware of any situation where they have the right to use it because they've repaired it. The circumstance that I'm speaking to, as we all know, we had an agreement with the Cayman Islands Tourism Association that in the areas where public dock, where in particular the dive groups, and there are others that use it, jet ski groups, others that use the docks, have 30 minutes to load and offload persons in that area. And in those circumstances, those persons have stepped up and repaired, assisted the government in repairing the docks after storms.
So, Mr. Chair,
Member from West Bay.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I've been here long enough to know that sometimes you get more done by keeping quiet than by coming on the floor of the House. And I know the minister is aware, and as he just said, that there is some agreement because tourism is so important. When we built the West Bay dock, jetty, whatever you want to call it, because at that time we had the problems nearly in every district where we had a facility, diving companies were using it. And as I said, we are mindful of the importance of tourism. But there comes a point when some of these companies are very, very pushy and aggravates the situation with our local people whom the facility was meant for in the first place. Not, in other words, not a commercial operation. And in West Bay, I've been particularly careful in not saying anything and doing anything, again, because that one is heavily used by the diving community or the diving companies, and I don't want to cause any problem, particularly in front of visitors and the dive boat clients that are there. But it is becoming a problem. I think the minister knows that of it. They have said in the past that they weren't using it. They were not particularly using their gas tanks and refilling gas tanks. And we've seen that happening because that is a very dangerous operation. local people, in other words, don't have, some of them don't have the kind of patience that I seem to have been developing, if I should put it that way. But it is, the minister, they're going to have to do something about these commercial operations and I won't belabor the point, but they're going to have to do something about the commercial operations that are using the district's jetties. I mean, people go there to play because it's still in shallow enough water. Children go and jump off the dock. It's all shallow water. It's right next to the public beach. That's what it was meant to do. It was meant to enhance our community and give them the facilities. And the dive boat operators chase the boys away, chase families away. This has happened there. And so it's becoming a real nuisance with them. And hopefully the government will have some mechanism to be able to control it better than what it is. Putting up signs is just not it, because we have a huge sign up there saying it's not a commercial operation. They do it, we go to the beach where the parking lot's supposed to be. They got it all, there is no parking space for you, either there or the other property that we purchased for the same purposes. So every time we expand, they expand more, seems like. And again, I don't want to create a situation where we are not being reasonable and assisting the tourism association and in fact assisting our tourism industry.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I don't know if policy has changed, but I know, like the speaker, it was no commercial activity except loading and unloading for 15 minutes. I made those signs and put them up. And that was not to load passengers. It was equipment. Because the passengers brings a different, an animal of a different color, it brings liability on government. And we refuse to make people, commercial activity, load passengers because of fear of them getting hurt. Dock is not properly repaired and we didn't know, and they get hurt, and the liability government could be faced with. East End, it's starting to creep in as well. And it's obstructing residents. It is not only those who use the government dock, because the private docks you can't fish from, and people feel that they have a right to fish from the government docks, which is reasonable to expect. But then the boats that try to get in there, these large dive boats are obstructing them. The parking lots are filled when it really should only be a boat coming in there to load tanks or whatever the case may be, and that commercial activity cease. But then by them loading passengers there, the whole parking lot is filled, especially at the Colliers Beach. And then the people who come by vehicle cannot get in a place to park to utilize the beach and the cabanas, because those vehicles are parked there all day. And I've tried asking about it. I've tried requesting something be done. This is the last resort.
Member for West Bay South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to just very briefly weigh in on this discussion, because as the member from West Bay West was talking about the dock in West Bay in particular, that certainly falls in my constituency, as well as an additional dock, which I know the minister has been very keen on helping us as representatives from West Bay to pursue. That is the dock at the Garvin Park area of Batabanoo. But Mr. Speaker, wanting to, just for the benefit of the persons in the listening public, obviously we have heard what the policy is about loading and unloading from a commercial perspective. I know I've had complaints, and I'm sure other members of the committee may have had for in their respective constituencies that where you have the public jetties and docks about people, commercial vehicles docking beyond the allotted time. And I've been I've been made aware that the newly minted Public Lands Commission is responsible for kind of overseeing and the use or and investigating any abuse of the public space in this way. So I would encourage people, if they have known instances of infractions where people are docking commercial vehicles, vessels that is docking overnight, causing a blockage to the public usage, that's something that they can pursue, is making a complaint to the Public Lands Commission as well. But as I said, I know the Minister is well aware of it and is making strides to address these concerns.
Minister?
Mr. Chairman, thank the member for his comments. We have, in the past, we have worked along with the Ministry of Tourism in trying to facilitate the use of the properties between the private sector, the public and the private sector. Now that the Public Lands Commission is up and running and they have their inspectors hired, we give the undertaking to the member that we will address this again with Trade and Business License, Ministry of Tourism, and the Public Lands Commission to find a suitable resolution.
All in favor of PAH4, Management of Public Recreational Facilities and Cemeteries, $845,000, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. PAH10, Management of Government Properties for $155,000. Are there any questions? Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the Minister, can the Minister say if there's a routine update to parks? And I'm speaking of one in particular, just for background, the airport park. I know that there's been a request in for extended utility outlets because the park is used on a regular basis for parties for kids and the like, and there's only one utility outlet. Is there any intentions of upgrading to have more outlets available for that park?
Mr. Chairman, thank the member for the question and the comment. That part does fall under our maintenance program, and I'll certainly have Parks and Recreation have a look at the outlet situation there. And may I just take this opportunity to remind the public that the list of all the parks and the booking of all the parks can now be done online, and you can reserve cabanas, etc., online as well.
Boddentown West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the Honorable Minister. Where exactly are we with regards to the security guards at the government admin building? This Legislative Assembly voted back in 2017 to have that issue addressed by December 31, 2018. I'm just wanting to get an update as to where we are.
Mr. Chairman, I think the member has a private PQ on this as well. No, was it?
That was no. We had filed a question long ago. We
oh, you didn't.
Not in this session coming up.
Okay. Yeah.
So you had the answer there all this time, and I didn't get it before.
Mr. Chairman, since the passage of the motion, the Facilities Maintenance Management Department has completed a strategic assessment, which resulted in a project charter being developed. Unfortunately, Mr. Chairman, the project charter development has been delayed due to some resources issue. Mr. Chairman, I will tell, I'll try to update the member. 1 second. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have the staff from Facilities Management update the member.
Troy Worms, Director of Facilities Management. Through you, Mr. Chair. Currently where we are right now is there's a business case that has been signed off. The procurement documents have been drafted and completed, and you will see that tender going out this month, sir.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, just through you, and this is just a general statement in that we're, when this House passes a resolution or something to be done that both government and opposition is an expectation to, and this is like over a year in which we expect it to be done, it defeats the purpose of passing motions and passing laws and passing legislation or whatever. If at the end of the day, everyone just choose whatever date to implement it, it defeats the purpose. So I just want to put that on the record that this was a motion, something that was approved by the Legislative Assembly. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I hear the member's concern. It was, a motion was approved to consider the matter. We have been considering, we've been working on finding the best way to do it without interruption. And of course, because we also had contracts in place already, so we are now progressing with the tender. We are trying to work on a solution that will allow us to do so. I want members to understand that the initial tender that we're putting out is we're trying to achieve at a minimum 60% Caymanian. So we're putting out, it doesn't mean that if the persons don't have more, it means that a person has more than, but there are certain factors that we realize that we would not be able to, in particular in the first round, get to 100% Caymanian without interruption to the services.
Mr. Chairman,
I have the member for Georgetown Central who had indicated beforehand.
I just want to comment.
Thank you, Mr.
Go
Chair.
ahead, sir.
Through you, since we have the project facilities project manager here now, I know that the ministry is undertaking some upgrades to town hall facilities. Can the project manager say to this committee whether or not the town halls across the island will all be unified or uniformed in those updates? For example, all have audio systems installed, all have projector systems installed, because what we have right now is some town hall facilities don't all have the same options available as others.
Mr. Chairman, the civic centers and town hall upgrades, Mr. Chairman, is under EA 152. And just to say that this is additional funding on top of what we are already have budgeted, but with the funding that we have available, I'm happy to address it, even though it's EA 152. These are strictly for upgrades and as well as repairs to the town halls. We do have some capital coming up in the coming budget for November to do some more extensive work. However, we have to do it within the budget. We wouldn't be able to do all town halls at once. But let me just say, Mr. Chairman, that the department and the ministry have taken the view that when we do upgrades to a town hall, that we don't just do the upgrades to the standards previously where it was just a blank room, but that we provide a facility that can be used for several other things, including a lot of the meetings and retreats, et cetera, that government have to go out and rent places in hotels and stuff. We're trying to get them up to the level where government can actually start utilizing it for some of their events, programs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, just a matter of what the standard would be. Does the minister have an idea of what the expectations they're trying to get to? I understand it. The minister has said probably not within this year, and some of those allocations may be needed for the next budget. But does he have an idea that he can share with this committee as to what we should expect in the future, these town halls and civic centers to be willing to offer to the public?
Mr. Chairman, this year, over and above the general upgrades in this financial year, we'll be doing AC upgrades, wall repairs, and painting at the Bottom Town Civic Center. That's currently on the way. In North Sides, we'll do windows and fencing upgrades. Who's GB? The GBAC or GB. The Gun Bay AC upgrades, and then the Georgetown Town Hall flooring, general upgrades, lighting, ceiling, and restrooms. That's what's coming up on the 152, yes. I said that he skipped ahead when he asked the question as a different appropriation.
Member for Northside.
Through you, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, okay.
to the minister. I thought the agreement in 2017 on the secured offices in government was that government was not a request for it to be retendered, because in all likelihood it'll wind up in the same security form because there's only one or two that can compete. Was the idea that we would hire Caymanians to work in these positions? We would create positions in the civil service and hire Caymanians to work there.
Mr. Chairman, that's a head count issue. That's something that's certainly out of my control, but what we are trying to do is, or I should say, the reason that we have waited until we've done the business case and then now for the retendering of the project is so that we can offer the companies the opportunity to advertise or restructure in a way that they would attract Caymanians to the job.
Those in favor of...
Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, sir.
Sorry. Mr. Chairman, I wonder if the minister can tell us when they intend knocking down that old post office in the East End, since we're on maintenance of government properties.
Mr. Chairman, unfortunately, I can't assist the member there as that belongs to the post office and is a lands issue. So I don't know if. Sorry.
Are we
under Ministry of Financial Services? Is it?
Are we talking about
Finance, Ministry of Finance, because it belongs to the post office.
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if we're talking about the same post office. Which one are we talking about? Which one are we referring to? There are 3 post offices in East End. Which one are you referring to?
Mr. Chairman, unfortunately, like I said, I think post offices fall under yourself. We're unaware
Mr.
of.
Chairman, we have the Gun Bay Post Office. We have the main post office. We know where they are. You're not talking about that one, mashing that up, though. There is a building owned by government. It was first used by the telephone company, government telephone company. And you remember that? No, to get communication from Georgetown and West Bay and Cameron-Brack and Bordentown to East End. It had one phone in it, one antenna. Cable and Wireless took it over then and put batteries in it. You remember?
Mr. Chairman,
my good friend, or sometimes. Long before hatchet were hammer when it was made of stone.
Minister?
And Mr. That is the one I'm talking about. It then turned into the post office, and then I turned it into a computer center, and then Hurricane Ivan destroyed it. Right there across from the beach below the gas station. That's the one I'm talking about. It is dilapidated, really.
Mr. Chairman, it's my understanding that that building is not under our care, but I will certainly endeavor. I promise the member that we will inquire and find out what we can for him and let him know, no matter which ministry it's under.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if it has changed, it changed recently because it was never on the post office, because if it was under me, when I was responsible for post office, I would have broken it down a long time. I would have taken that a long time. It is on the government. That's part of the property. Mr. Chairman, as a matter of fact,
it's not under facilities management.
As a matter of fact, it is managed by government because it is in that proposal to dispose of.
I think the minister had said to members,
which was sent out by your ministry,
that he would undertake to get to the bottom of it and find out.
Mr. Chairman, I think he's speaking about the previous ministry. Mr. Chairman, I do not have responsibility for land, sir. But I promised the member that I will undertake to find out what is happening with the property.
Member for Savannah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the minister. In regards to support the Public Works Department for maintenance of Crown properties, I'm not quite sure the Nurse Joseph Senior Center at Bordentown behind Cumber Avenue, the air conditioner has been leaking there and is making a proper good mess. And as you know, that entire facility is literally run, cleaned up, raked up and everything by 68 senior citizens from the Heritage Committee in Bordentown with minimal help from government. Mr. Dart or his group or cleaners were supposed to do the yard, and if you go to that, sometimes you have to crawl through the leaves to find out where you are. Made to understand it's going to be turned over to the cleanup of Public Works soon. If someone could check on it, the hurricane shutters that they tried to put on there, they were so warped up that they made out of plywood, whatever it was. It can't even hardly fit into the windows. If someone could just please take a look at it and pay a little attention and encourage these ladies whenever anything is happening, going on. And I'll just give an example. The Reset Agricultural Society, they begged them to come back there to set up and so on and so forth. They went there. They begged them to come to help with the prints. And I don't know if you guys looked at the papers. There was not one article identifying the numerous hours that they put together setting up a little display for royalty. No one recognized them, and you know that's something that happens in Cayman, as you know. But I'm begging you, sir, in your honorable way, and how you dealt with your thing. If you could please try to look at them. The Minister of Tourism came up there, looked at it, identified the potential. He ordered his head of tourism to come up there within 2 weeks to meet with them. I'm made to understand, should not get there yet. So I'm pleading to the cabinet and all powers that be to try to help us out. It's about Cayman, it's about the heritage of these islands. Please let's try to hold on to it and protect. You see what's going on there this week, how everybody trying to rub our face into the ground. Please help.
Mr. Chairman, I thank the member, and I'll speak to him after, but we will have someone go and have a look at the AC and so on, and then we can have discussions for further down the road. Yeah.
All in favor of PAH 10, Management of Government?
Chairman, just one quick question.
Go ahead, Member for Georgetown South.
I'll be quick on this. I understand that the electrical outlets at the Red Bay dock have been removed, or I guess the wires are all pulled out and stuff. And I know one of the churches actually used that parking area for their Easter sunrise service. Can someone indicate why that they were removed?
Mr. Chairman, I thank the member for bringing this to our attention. We'll send someone out to have a look right away. You say Red Bay, you mean South Sound, as some call it? Yeah, okay. We'll have someone go out and check it right away, sir.
All in favor of PAH 10, Management of Government Properties, $155,000, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. PAH 16, Licensing of Drivers and Vehicles, $400,000. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Member for East End.
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if we can break this down as to what this is for.
Mr. Chairman, in an effort to try and reduce or deal with the why is this different? You sure he's not looking at a different appropriation?
No, because this is the one that finance.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Mr. Chairman, thank you. Sorry about the delay. Mr. Chairman, this is simply to keep up with the demand for the plates. We underestimated the amount of plates based on previous numbers of vehicles being licensed, but with the major increase in vehicles being licensed, this is to cover the cost of the plates.
Mr. Chairman.
Member for East End.
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if I could be told in total how many vehicles are on the road, and if they want to break it down between motorbike and other vehicles, then that's fine.
Mr. Chairman. You don't have 2018? You don't have 2018.
I have 2018 screen.
Mr. Chairman, we don't seem to have 2018, just 2017 here, but I'm happy to provide that to the member in writing if you'd like, or you want us to find it and come back later.
No, I want, how much was in 2017?
2017, total motor vehicles was 35,067.
That's all inclusive, included?
That's all inclusive, yes.
35,000?
And 67. Sorry, no, 35,838.
838.
838.
Keep going up, for you. Mr. Chairman, I wonder if the minister can find out how much the new system can tell us how much that new system cost us in 2014. Mr. Chairman, I don't expect the minister to tell me to the
Just
exactly.
update Mr. Chairman, just update the member. The total numbers licensed for 2018 was 42,459. And what was it?
1.3 million.
Mr. Chairman, I am being reliably informed that the contract amount was 1.3 million.
Mr. Chairman, can the minister now find out from that director, I think that's who's advising him, if any plates were included in that $1.3 million contract?
Mr. Chairman, it was 90,000 plates, but that's pair, so equals to about 45,000 vehicles.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, I wonder if how much we are paying for these additional plates?
Mr. Chairman, is the member asking, this appropriation is for the extra plates. Are you asking how much per plate? How many plates we're getting for the 400,000? Is that what you're asking?
For the 400, how much are we paying per plate?
Mr. Chairman, I'm being reliably informed that the plates cost about just over $8 a plate CI. That doesn't include the services that we provide on our end for it, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I'm now being told that's US, not CI.
Mr. Chairman, let me ask the minister. He gave an answer of 90,000 plates when we purchased this equipment. Mr. Chairman, can the minister double check to see if it wasn't 100,000 plates? Plus another 12,000 for motorbikes.
It was, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I am being reliably informed. It was 90,000 vehicle plates and 1,000 motorcycle plates.
I made a mistake at 12,000. It was 1,200 motorbike plates and 100,000 vehicle plates. But let's say it was 90. Where are the other 3,000 plates? That is, we're saying we have increased. Since 2017, we have only increased by less than 3,000. Just about 3,000. Just about 3,000. Seven? 7,000 vehicles. And what was the price, Mr. Chairman, that those plates were at the time we did this contract? What was the cost of those plates at the time you did the contract?
On the first question, Mr. Chairman, we have to purchase the plates and they have to be within the budget for us to be able to issue them. So we have to have the plates either in stock or within the budget. So we want to ensure that with the continued growth of the country and the amount of vehicles that are being imported, that we have the plates to be able to put on those vehicles. Because if we do not budget for them, Mr. Chairman, we can't purchase the plates.
So, Mr. Chairman, are we saying
we're purchasing for the year to get us through the year?
So per car, it is $16, $17 to fit these plates out. And yeah, and that is US. That is US.
That's what I'm being informed, yes, sir.
So what was the US cost when we bought it? The initial cost?
Members, is this something that the ministry can agree to provide for? Because I'm sensing that they don't have the information.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, the problem is that this system is not good, not fit for purpose, and we continue to utilize it when we don't even have readers for it as yet. It is not fit for purpose. There is at least 40% of the vehicles in this country that still does not have license plates. And we had 90,000 and we now come and buy more license plates. That's where this is going, Mr. Chairman, because it's not fit for purpose. They ordered this thing and it was not properly vetted, and we don't have the readers up, the repeaters up. We don't have the readers for the police department, which is included in that $1.3 million. And this is what we constantly get with ministers being blindsided with this junk that they order, and then we could come here and approve monies for them to carry on this rubbish that they have in place. And it is absolute rubbish. Well, it goes much deeper than this, Mr. Chairman, than we can question here. Because some of the questions that I need to ask is, do they have the readers for the police department to stop cars on the road? They don't have them. Nevertheless, they told us
Mr. Chairman,
they have them.
we do have the readers.
So
Mr.
why
Chairman.
aren't they being used? And Mr. Chairman, while the minister is asking why aren't they being used, if he could just ask them another question. What percentage of plates in 2000, since we only have 2,459, and we had 45,000 plates, plus 1,200 for motorbikes, that would be 600 motorbikes, 45,000 vehicles. Since we have only utilized 4,249 for 2,459, how many vehicles does not have plates of the new generation plates?
Mr. Chairman, on the police readers, the police do have the readers. I would be happy to discuss it privately with the member, but this is law enforcement. It's a safety issue, if I can use that term. And Mr. Speaker, the readers are capable of and are up and running. We also, just to let as a member, as a bit of information for the member, we have gantries on the way. We have the stationary readers as well. We will start those next month, installing those next month in the first one will be installed next month, I should say, in key areas. So we'll also have those available as well. But the system is being deployed properly on the plates. To say to the member that one of the issues we have, as you rightly pointed out, that there are vehicles without the new plates, is a distribution issue. We have ran into issues at the DVDL with trying to relicense vehicles with the increase that we've had, and then deploy or enter and code the sticker and the plates together and get those out to the vehicles. We are addressing that now. We will be trying to set up distribution points that we can actually get these plates out, but that is simply the issue, is that we have thousands of plates that have been embossed and are ready to get out, and we just need to get them registered and distributed to the vehicle owners.
So, Mr. Chairman, why is it that these plates haven't been given to the new owners? Didn't they come in to the inspection? At the very least, to get their vehicle license, and don't tell me they can do it on the online, and we're not in contact with them, because somebody needs to interact through the computer, through the internet, or otherwise with those customers. And Mr. Chairman, at the same time, are we having difficulties up there because we didn't have the right, it wasn't the intent to have them do the administrative part, the same company? It was just the license plates they were doing? Now we have had to go and do an addendum to that to deal with that?
Mr. Chairman, if I can try and remember all the questions, the issue was simply that one of resources. The large increase in the number of vehicles being licensed, and perhaps, certainly I wasn't there in the beginning, but I do believe, my personal belief is that they underestimated the level of work that it would take to implement this program and get the plates out onto the vehicles at the same time. What they have done is they're now attempting to move forward with all of the new vehicles that come in and get those licensed and plated while we go through the ones that we've already embossed and get those onto the vehicle. So they're working on several different ways to do that. On the reasons for why we are in the position where we are today, it was simply a resource issue, as I just said, and I do believe that in the they also had some as the other member said, I heard earlier said bandwidth, but it wasn't a bandwidth issue, it was a supply issue from or the ability for the program, the system to run with the supply they had. This was a GIS issue that we worked along with the manufacturer to rectify. We are now in a position, Mr. Chairman, to move forward, and I feel confident that we will get caught up with these plates, and members will start to notice a difference there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, on two matters. The minister said that he wouldn't mind talking to me offline about police because security issue. It's not a security issue. With all due respect, Mr. Chairman, it is an enforcement issue. This has nothing to do with security of this country. This has to do with the commission of crime and somebody stopping them. That's what this has to do with. And if that is security, I don't want to talk about it offline. I want the public know why we have spent $1.3 million and it's not fit for purpose. $1.3 million of their money, not my money. I am minuscule in the scheme of things, but I think it should be ventilated here so people can understand why a simple thing like the implementation of a changing a license plate needs to come down to them can't get that in place. Besides, Mr. Chairman, I hear them saying that they're going to notify people by cell phone text when their license is up. I don't know when my license up now though, unless I look on my logbook. In the past, you had the little thing, but they got to notify people by and don't quirk at me, my friend. Wrong place. Wrong place. Wrong timing. By cell phones, not everybody has cell phone that has cars. There must be another way of doing it.
Member?
I would like to ask the minister to give me a question, answer me how vehicle with, but they changed them here a minute too, vehicle with different plates other than those that were supposedly issued under the law and is legal in this country are being used on vehicles in this country.
Mr. Chairman, I'm being informed that the department is aware of a few plates being used locally that are not authorized and that they have informed the police of that.
Mr. Chairman, you mean we're saying that there are cars on the road illegally and people are seeing them and we can't find one police car go take them off the road? You want me to give you a picture of one right there in First Caribbean Bank parking lot? We are aware that there are cars with the wrong license plate, meaning it has not reached the licensing department because it's wrong. They're supposed to have the Cayman plate on it, and nobody doing anything about it?
Member, I do really need to give some other members a chance to question.
Mr. Speaker, but the questions you ask gets answers that invoke other questions. We are allowing people to break the law and know they're breaking it, putting other people in danger. That is the national security. Because they have no insurance too.
Member for Bodden Town West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the Honorable Minister. With regards to liens that are placed on cars by banks through the vehicle that's registered with the license department, what is the government's policy or the policy in terms of those liens being placed and do they have an expiration date? Because there are many people now that when they have paid off their loan, it is going through a long, cumbersome process to take the liens off, sorry, when in fact it should just be an automatic date where you set it for a date and it automatically falls off rather than people being dragged through to get all of this stuff done. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, through you, have been reliably informed that at the moment, the current process is that the bank has to notify the department and they pay a fee to have the lien removed from the vehicles.
Just a follow-up question. Through you, Mr. Chairman, is it possible for when the liens are placed in the vehicle that it has an expiration date? Because most loans have an expiration date. And if someone goes back and refinance it, then you would expect that the bank would notify them that the expiration date has changed again, but it should be something that's automatic where it falls off. And if it's in the bank's due then to keep it on after the expiration date. But if someone has paid it off before, then at least they can go and get it taken off before. But it's something that should just automatically fall away. But it's being dragged out now way too long.
Mr. Chairman, I'll certainly take that into consideration. I just had a quick sidebar, but we will look into it and speak with the banking institutions if we can do that.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, thanks. And my second question actually has to do with derelict vehicles. Most of those vehicles that are just left lying along the side of the road, I mean, at some point, they would have a registered owner. No, I know that some people would have sold it on to someone, but at the same time, the cost of moving those derelict vehicles should be borne by the last registered owner that is there, and it's not something that the public and the government should be paying for when these things have become a nuisance where people are just leaving them at the side of the road. So I think the vehicle license department, the best department, that would be in a position to say who's the registered owner And if needs be, we look at putting a fine or some penalty to making sure that people properly dispose of vehicles rather than just leaving them on the side of the road.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And yes, it is the responsibility of a person when you sell a vehicle to transfer that vehicle or turn in your plates, either one. There's two things happening, Mr. Chairman. Within the next couple of weeks, we will be able to launch the amnesty program that the Legislative Assembly agreed to do, so that persons who have long or who have plates or in possession of plates over the years can turn those in without any fines. And we are now currently working along with, and you would have saw some press this week about the DEH, Department of Environmental Health, collecting derelict vehicles. We're now working along with them. They're providing us a list with the plates, and we're providing the information for them.
All in favor of PAH 16, licensing of drivers and vehicles, $400,000, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. PAH 20, license, monitoring, and enforcement of specified business types, $266,000. Any questions? Member for Georgetown West. Georgetown Central, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see that this appropriation is for the enforcement for the implementation of recommendations that include the AML and the CFT. Is there any provisions available for the enforcement arm of DCI to help with enforcement violations locally? Because we're having many businesses that are not operating within their business license parameters, or don't have any, for that fact. They're affecting law-abiding license fees paying good business persons who are being affected in a negative way. So my question is, yes, I see that this funding is for the enforcement of our international arm of our business, but are we focusing also on our local arm of our local businesses?
Mr. Chairman, through you, no, this is separate and apart from our current enforcement staff, and DCI do have an enforcement team, and we will be boosting those numbers in the next budget cycle as well. But I would say to the member, if there is any information he can provide us with, I can personally tell you that the DCI enforcement team are very responsive in their actions when you point things out to them. So happy to come through the ministry and let us know.
Member for Bordentown West, you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, through you. The description for this says to support the hire of additional staff for the Department of Commerce and Investment in order to implement recommendations included in the AML/CFT action plan. What recommendations exactly are they looking to implement? I'm just trying to get a better understanding. Thanks.
This is the oversight and licensing and monitoring of specific businesses, in particular real estate and precious metals dealers.
How many staff are we looking to hire with this amount of money?
3, sir.
Okay, thanks.
That's 1 senior compliance officer and 2 compliance officers.
Member for East End.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know this may be cross ministries, but the minister just spoke of real estate agents. And it may be cross ministry, but obviously the licensing of them, of real estate agents, should not allow them to be compliance, dealing with transfer of lands as well. And a number of them are doing that, where they witness documentation for transfer of properties and that kind of stuff. And that may very well be over to lands and survey, where that is dealt with. But I would ask that the director of DCI know that that is an illegal business they're carrying on. They can't be picked, being note republics and signing these things off. That is for someone else to do. But I should say, Mr. Chairman, and when it's all said and done, when kudos should be leveled at someone, then when criticism should be, that should be too. I should say that the DCI has been extremely responsive to things that I have called let me call him Ryan, because the surname is kind of difficult to, and it's a little tongue twister. So I want to publicly say that they have been extremely responsive whenever I've called them, and that is fresh and nice to know.
If there are no further questions, all in favor of PAH 20, license monitoring and enhancement of specified business types, $266,000, please say aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. PAH 23, apprenticeship program, $412,100. Oops. $100. Questions?
Yes.
Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, can the minister say how much more persons will be able to take advantage of this training vocational program as a result of this increase in funding?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank the member for the question. Mr. Chairman, we will be able to increase the numbers up to a maximum of 50, but we believe until we get the facilities built and stuff that the numbers will be around 30. So we currently have 17 persons in the program, so it'll be another 13 or so.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, can the minister say what is the age group that this training program is focusing on or facilitating for at this moment?
Mr. Chairman, these are school leavers because we have been traditionally partnering with SciFec in particular, and the kids are already doing some basic courses there, and then we also provide them with internships in the summer, and then they move right into the program after SciFec.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair,
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Let me also add that we have also identified young persons that show up for the NICE programs, et cetera, that we have seen through the program, and they seem to be unemployed, and we've encouraged them to participate as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, has the ministry identified persons who are not school leavers that would be interested in taking on a long-term training opportunity through this program outside of the NICE program?
Mr. Chairman, through you, at the moment, with the limited resources we have, we found that we are more than, I would say, we are over subscribed by the students leaving school in particular out of the SciFec program. Perhaps as we are up to capacity and spaces become available, that we can start to include others. But at the moment, we are getting the students out that have come through a particular channel where they have participated in similar courses in the SciFec program, and many of them as well as summer interns, and then they move right into the apprenticeship program.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, can the minister say, has there been any research done of persons who would be willing to be involved in a vocational training program that is not coming out of the high schools on island, particularly those who've been distant from school leaving age, for example, 23 and above?
I don't know. Mr. Chairman, I am unaware. We have not. We are unaware of any research done through through this program. Just to say, it may have been done through other departments or other ministries. And just to say, Mr. Chairman, I understand. I often speak about second chances for persons that are not high school leavers, but are looking for, in particular, for opportunities to restart a career or to get into the workforce on a steady basis. I'm very much aware of that, and I'm a huge supporter of that. But we have a working program right now that is oversubscribed, and when we do get to the point where we can take on others, then we can do that, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you again, I appreciate the minister's enthusiasm about taking more persons on, but he hasn't said about the age group that I'm speaking of. I think that the ministry is doing a tremendous job on focusing on persons who are coming out of SciFec and out of the high school systems to this program. What I am trying to get the minister to acknowledge is that there is a large gap of individuals who are far removed from the high school program who may have missed this opportunity for vocational and training programs, which this program does not offer. Has the ministry done any research in respect to looking into whether they would want to focus on those persons out there who could take advantage of this now booming construction industry that we have?
Mr. Chairman, it is a program that is potential 3-year program, level 1 through level 3. We are oversubscribed by school leavers, in particular from SciFec, for the program. I am aware that there are others, and perhaps it is not, Mr. Chairman, as if we have space that we're not allowing anyone else into it. It is simply that we are addressing a need, as the public has cried out, for a technical school, for our technical and vocational training programs for our kids leaving out of high school that are not going to go off overseas for further education, or are not going to be your doctors, your lawyers, etc. We're criticized every day for that. And now we have a working program that is growing and is oversubscribed at the minute for school leavers. So the minute that we can grow this to the point where we can take others, I would be the first person to support it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, last two supplementaries. Is the minister then saying it's a funding problem as to why he wouldn't be able to address the need for other persons who would like to take advantage of this program or such a program?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Can you repeat that for me? I apologize. I was being briefed on something.
It's okay. Through you, Mr. Chairman, the minister just said that at this particular point, these are the resources that you have available, and it's oversubscribed, and if there's more resources, they would happily accept more persons to want. So I then asked the minister, is it a funding problem why we can't accept more persons, not only school leavers, but persons who are far removed from school into such a program?
Mr. Chairman, no, that is why we're here. So, Mr. Chairman, this vote is to get in additional staff and a certified instructor full-time, as right now it's being done as a second duty for public works staff, and to increase the ability for us to increase in the numbers. In EI 71 on the next page, you'll see funding for us to build a purpose-built training room that we will then be able to grow the numbers up to 50 students.
Mr. Chairman, is the minister saying that that's the current number of persons who are wanting to be involved in a trade and vocational program in the Cayman Islands? Is there any research analysis as to the numbers out there, or are they just saying, well, that's how much money they're putting towards it, they can handle 50 people and that's it, as opposed to doing any market research as to how many people in the community would like to take up such a program?
Mr. Chairman, we did not conduct a formal survey. However, we saw the ability, the opportunity in the current location to basically double the size of a building so that we would be able to have a dedicated training room that would have a capacity of about 50. And we are also building our staff complement and training complement, as well as the necessary equipment that we can grow to 50. We may find initially that we may get to 50 right away. We may not get to 50 right, there may be space. But no, we have not carried out a formal survey. But of the kids that we have coming through, we right away, we know that we'll be able to take this program up to about 30 students. And then we hopefully, and I hope that we will be able to grow it to 50 and to the point where we're bursting and need to grow it even more. Just the same, Mr. Speaker, also, I was being informed a minute ago that we continue to work with the NICE program and others. Currently we have 3 persons that were identified from the NICE program working through a training program within Public Works Department that were not school leavers, and what I term as persons needing an opportunity to get back into the workforce.
Last supplementary, Mr. Chairperson.
Absolutely the last one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If the minister and this administration had sufficient data to suggest that there is more persons in the community who would want to be involved in such a program that are not a part of the school leavers program, so SIFEC coming out of school, who maybe have been full-grown individuals at this stage who would be willing to be involved in this program, say, for instance, surpassing your number of 50, will the minister be willing to give the commitment to put the necessary resources and employees in place to be able to facilitate those numbers?
Mr. Chairman, we are currently have the ability to expand physically and to grow the training complement to be able to accommodate 50 students at this time. Mr. Speaker, this is the third year of the program. Third year of the program. We did the pilot in 2016, I think it was, 16, 17. And now we're into our third year with the program. I will say to the member that if the program continues to prove as successful as it is, and the demand is there, that I don't see any reason why the government wouldn't support such a program to grow it even further.
Members of the committee, it is now 25 minutes to 5. I've been sitting here for about 3 hours. I need to stretch my legs. Can we take a 5-minute break? If members are mindful, just linger around and we'll be back. When we return, we'll continue. I think the leader of the opposition had a couple of questions as well.